Peter, secured by double chains in prison, is the troubling image outlined in our reading this weekend from the Acts of the Apostles. When Peter's successor Leo was chosen a short few weeks ago, he looked genuinely humbled and timid. His life changed in an instant as he accepted what many consider a thankless and almost impossible role. Managing the church requires not only spiritual wisdom, but also administrative acumen. In a context of relentless scrutiny, Jesuit Thomas Rees, writing about papal candidates, says what they are looking for is Jesus Christ with an MBA. I wonder if Leo has felt chained since his life-changing election. On a weekend when the church celebrates the solemnity of Peter and Paul, it is helpful to recall that it was upon the rock of Peter's faith that the church emerged, and from Paul's encounter with the risen Christ and his dynamic energy that the church spread. With all the criticism and disdain for the church that pervades in our secular times, there was a peculiar fascination with the recent papal conclave. There is a steadfastness about Peter's chair that seems to reassure even modernists. Steadiness is considered a central pillar of spiritual maturity. Steadiness is not stubbornness or even perseverance, but rather an intentional commitment to remain faithful through dryness, doubt, boredom, and the slow unfolding of life. Spiritual writers argue that steadfastness is deeply countercultural, an act of resistance against the impulse to escape or start over. Father Ronald Rolheiser reasons that the greatest test of faith is to remain faithful when we feel nothing, see nothing, and receive no consolation. God is in the waiting. Psychologist Angela Duckworth popularized the concept of grit, described as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Angela writes, enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare. Duckworth's work suggests that those who succeed in meaningful life pursuits, whether parenting, education, creative work, or spiritual practice, are not necessarily the most gifted, but the most committed over time. Jesuit James Martin rationalizes, in real life, you don't fall in love every day with your work or your calling. You're faithful to it. That's the heart of any vocation, fidelity, not feeling. Secular writer Brené Brown interestingly argues that trust and courage grow in those who dare to stay, to keep showing up even when it's hard. She counsels courage is not just about being brave, it's about showing up when you can't predict or control the outcome. The miraculous liberation of Peter from prison speaks to the efficacy of prayer and the steadfastness of faith. When Rhoda, a servant girl, hears Peter's voice and runs to inform the others, they initially dismiss her, thinking she is out of her mind. A story that underscores the human tendency to doubt even when prayers are answered. The second reading from Paul to Timothy is poignant. As Paul approaches the end of his earthly journey, he reflects not with regret, but with gratitude, serenity, and faith. Peter speaks in the first reading about the Lord sending an angel to rescue him. And in the second reading, Paul senses that he was rescued from the lion's mouth. Peter in Matthew's Gospel, despite his frailties, is handed the keys to insight and God's pathway. As I prepared this talk, in one breath, I felt energized by the potential that rests in the word grit. And in the other, I heard a cautionary inner voice. Empathize with those who haven't stayed the course. Good friends who have left the priesthood. Others who have escaped relationships and roles to start over. Like all good virtues, steadfastness should never be judgmental. People can feel chained as they search for the keys to happiness. Liberation is sometimes escaping to start over. Still, steadfastness is so often the very soil in which blessing grows. It is to imitate Peter and Paul by trusting God without visible reassurance, staying faithful even when the heart feels empty. Amen.